Okay, Jeremy, how does that look?
That looks good. Yeah.
That's it. Okay. All right. Should we get started? Or tell me when to start.
Yeah, we're good to go now. I'm going to. Oops. And of course, my video just went away. There we go. All right, we can go ahead and get started.
All right. Welcome to the special meeting for the Community Media Access Committee. We will start with the roll call.
Okay. Committee member DeMatthew is not going to be here tonight. Committee member Lewis.
Present.
Committee member Newton. Okay.
Here.
Okay. Committee member Kenny.
Present.
Committee member Stapleton Gray.
Here.
Committee member Siegel.
Here.
Chair Winkelstein.
Here.
Okay.
Thank you. And now the next thing is the approval of the minutes. Do anybody have any comments, additions, subtractions, whatever to the minutes?
No, look good.
They look good. Okay. A motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move
Okay. So moved.
minutes approval.
I'll second.
Seconded. All right. Moved by committee member Kenny. Such long names. And seconded by committee member Lewis. Take a vote. What is that called? What I call that?
Here we go. So committee member DeMatthew, not here. Committee member Lewis. Aye. Okay. Committee member Kenny.
Aye.
Committee member Newton.
Aye.
Committee member Stapleton Gray.
Aye.
Committee member Siegel. Chair Winkelstein.
Aye.
Okay.
So it passes. The minutes are approved. The next thing is to go to public comment. If there's any members of the community who would like to comment on something that's not on the agenda, we can give you. We have no members attending. Do we have any?
We have one, but I don't see any raised hands.
Okay. All right. So just in case that one person, I'll give you a second to make a comment. All right. We'll close the public comment. That was a short public comment. Announcements. Are there any announcements? Let's see. Ross, do you have anything you want to say about this subcommittee? I mean, member Stapleton Gray.
No, we met. Unfortunately, I didn't much add to the work plan draft because I was in the process of recovering our stolen car. But you and I and member Lewis met and continued our discussion of areas in which we could focus on both sort of gauging communication connectivity and evangelizing same in two sides, both in, say, bringing more people to the internet, ensuring resources are there, but recognizing that that is not the channel that everyone's going to be on, and looking at ways in which the city might reach those other groups via other groups, et cetera, and get a better gauge of how it's doing on that front.
Great, thank you. Any questions about that or any comments or any other reports?
I do have a few updates for the committee. We're looking to bring public meetings and back in person and virtual this summer. So that's kind of the end that we're working at, starting with City Council late July and the school board in August, and working towards a combination Zoom webinar environment with our live public meetings and cameras, working out all of those details and figuring out exactly which facility, whether it's going to be the community center or City Hall. So over the course of the next couple months, I'll be building out 2 camera systems that are kind of ready to go, one at the community center and one at City Hall. So we're kind of ready to go for either one, knowing that we want cameras in both locations in the future anyways. And then
Terrible.
also, oh yeah.
Is the expectation that all the council members, all the school board members would be attending the physical meetings?
That's what we're looking at, but we don't have any clear definition from the state what that kind of guidance would be for distancing, vaccinations, in-person, masks, no masks, and we imagine that all of that will be changing over the course of the next couple of months. So it's a variety. So my challenge is trying to figure out a good way to make the audience participation in the virtual world seamlessly integrated with the in-person part of the meeting. With the expectation that physical attendance by maximum numbers of people in person will be limited, right? So there will be some degree, we just don't know what public participation in person will be limited to. The other thing that I was going to mention is the city is doing an update to the Parks and Open Space Master Plan. You probably have seen a little bit of this, but as a city and working with the consultants, we just left a meeting today where we're actively working towards incorporating the analog versions of notification, postcards, flyers, posters, in-person dissemination, and some questions came up around phone tree information, trying to find all the different ways to communicate this information to the Albany public who is not already connected to the internet and seeing all of our e-news, e-notifications, social media. So really bringing that conversation into the public outreach. Even though the committee hasn't worked on that specifically to date, that's being incorporated into our ongoing activity with public information about high priority items. So I imagine we'll see more of this as we go forward.
That's really interesting that it's in Parks and Rec, and that's because signage is visible in public, and that's why it would be Parks and Rec?
No, this is probably our first major campaign with a vendor for a large scale project that really requires citywide sharing of information. And we're trying to take what we've gleaned from these last 6 months of, people mentioning this at public meetings and integrating that into our workflow and finding ways to. So the city is listening, and hopefully these suggestions that have come out of CMAC and from other members of the community for different ways to get the information out there will be more successful in making that outreach happen.
That's really interesting that it's coming together like that. And then I had a question just to go back to your previous point. If you decide on, say, the council chambers or what was it? Yeah, City Hall or Community Center. Is there a conversation about having the Zoom available in the other chamber, even if people are not physically?
Yes.
For the public to physically be there, but the group is in the other one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is part of kind of like the video distribution around our facilities. Like how do we do that? How do we take a video stream of a live meeting and take it into additional rooms at the community center? The Edith Stone room in the library, which has been a place for us to hold additional capacity. We'll have to work with the library because they're currently used that as a staging area for their book drop off. So we'll have to figure out what that means in terms of, there's a lot of balls in the air. So we're trying to figure out, what that's going to be. But yes, video distribution around facilities is part of the discussion. Whether or not we'll be able to do that to anybody's degree of satisfaction, I'm not sure. We'll figure that out. City Hall is a little bit more challenging because there's less space. But we don't know what those parameters are going to be Apparently, according to the governor, June 15th, everything is open as if it always was, but we don't really know what that means.
Yeah, it seems like the library would be a really great partner in that because they have people coming into the library who may to use the internet, for example. So in terms of whatever's coming up at a meeting, the library could play an active role. They could have book carts with books that are relevant or links that were bookmarked on their computers or signage. I mean, they could really, and the community center for that matter, could really be actively engaged in letting the public know, and then saying, and guess what? You could just come right here to this room, and you could actually watch the meeting.
Yeah, and so that's part of the discussion that's happening right now, because right now city buildings are not open to the public. So there's a number of things in the works before we can get to that point for where the public could be in place to watch the meetings. And those are the things. So I'll keep you updated. Our next, official meeting is in July. So we'll definitely have it figured out by then, whether or not the committee needs to call a special meeting in June. And we'll get to, what else is on the agenda tonight, but we can talk about that later.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you, Jeremy. Any other comments or questions or announcements? Right. So then the next thing is there's no presentations, no presentations. And then so right, I guess get straight to the work plan, right?
Yeah, I go ahead and get that started for us. So I took all of the comments that were submitted by the committee and put them into kind of a cleaner paragraph form that is getting closer to the format. Actually, let me step back. At I think it was the last council meeting, Vice Mayor Jordan expressed some concerns about the way that city advisory bodies are presenting work plans, and the city council is going to be looking at that at an upcoming meeting, which will likely change some degree of the formatting and the content the council is asking for. So what I did was took some basic ideas of what the work plan may get towards in terms of concise information, but we may actually need to bring this back one more time to the committee after we talk about the actual items, because the council may be asking for additional information in terms of past accomplishments or some other parameters that have not totally been decided by the council. So what I did here was take those various pros and cons that the committee worked through and put those into a general statement about the item, and the committee tonight can go through each item, wordsmith, and come up with perhaps a better statement for the committee's intention, and then these will need to be ranked in order of priority. So right now it's kind of arbitrary. The first one is on the top, but we'll go through either a series of voting or polling to get everybody's suggestion for what is the most important, and I can take some notes on that, or it can be by a general consensus that everybody agrees that survey the community is the top priority and physical outreach is the second priority. Any questions about what the process is? And then I'd suggest that we probably go and the titles of each one of these items can also be addressed. We can, I just took everything that was there and kind of put it into more of a sentence structure, but we can certainly go through and clean up all of this as we go through it. Maybe we could start with a general discussion, and then Julie, if you're fine doing the edits and the modifications to this, we can go from there.
Sure. Yeah. So I know that there was something on the rough document that this is from about the survey that we talked about at our subcommittee, which was having some sort of, oh no, there it is. Sorry, it's there. An annual report was what we were thinking as part of that. that was something that came up. So yeah, does anybody want to start in terms of anything, really? The titles, we could start with item 1, physical outreach. Any comments, changes? And you should have a separate copy of this too, that was sent to you.
So the only thing that I will say, and I just want to clarify, because I know we talked about this in our subcommittee meeting, was in terms of the physical outreach versus surveying the community. Because I think I just want to be clear that the goal is to understand where our deficits in accessibility lie. And so I just want to make sure, like, are those two separate, or is for people who don't have the ability to do a digital survey, the physical outreach would be a part of that? And should we condense those two?
So what you're saying is, since we can't really survey the community without knowing how to, without being able to reach them, that we should combine them. Is that what you're?
Yeah, I was my understanding that there are different methods of surveying. There's like digital surveying, but then also like potentially doing something in the community so we could identify people who weren't having to access the internet to be surveyed that way. I thought it was just another method of surveying.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, John.
No. I was just going to say, because if the survey is digital, we wouldn't necessarily understand people's accessibility who don't have access.
Totally. Yeah. So I think that my understanding was that item 1 was more about how we could communicate, not related to the survey, but just in general, like how do we do a non-digital communication with the community so that everybody knows what's going on, and that's one thing. And then surveying the community is different, but I think that we really need to stress that the survey is not, maybe under an accessible, we should add something pointing out that it could be digital and non-digital. Do you want me, should I add that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And yeah, I think that clarifies the difference between what the physical outreach is versus that.
What if you, are we supposed to raise our hands? Can
because of the
I'm just raising
sharing,
my hand here.
yeah, because of the sharing, I can't see everybody. I have to kind of scroll back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so just feel free to do what
It
you-
does. It does seem like they could be combined into community outreach. You know, maybe one is a survey, one is the physical. Then maybe change. Maybe by that you mean non-digital. Is that right? The physical outreach would really be anything non-digital.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So what are you suggesting, that we combine 1 and 2 and call it
I'll maybe call it all outreach. And
Okay.
then call one of them non-digital, one survey the community, and then, you know, the problems with, you know, the issues with that,
I'm just gonna see if there's,
which I think it says there, digital and non-digital. So,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say surveying as a process, and not survey, capital S. There is one. There are many ways.
yeah,
AUSD has a measure of how many people are connected as families. The library knows how many people are getting access via the library. Collectively, the city can say by the end of the year, this changed over the previous year. We have a better understanding. Here are the groups that we've gotten things out to in paper form and in other forms. So that's the more what I would mean by survey, kind of like the census, where there are a variety of techniques applied. Even if some people are getting a straightforward questionnaire, that might be more a sample, and various things go together to produce a how well are we doing measure.
okay, so if we combine, are you, Ross, are you also saying combine the two?
They could be, so long as I guess there's a feedback part. The city should do more outreach in a variety of channels and should have a better idea of how well it's done across those channels. And I think there's a later item that talks about trying to increase digital accessibility, but that's a separate thing. That's one of the techniques that the city might use to broaden its reach. But it's separate from the city should do outreach and should measure how well it's doing outreach.
Okay, somebody have a suggestion? So right now, determine functional communication strategies.
Well, my relationship with the city of Albany goes about 7 years. And I remember when I first started visiting my son when he first bought his home, I got involved with the seniors center. And about 2 years after that, I started getting emails. And then I think I got some correspondence. But then after that, nothing happened. So for starters, we live in the technology age, and an internet message is very inexpensive if you have the proper software and everything else. So I think we should make a recommendation that, like, the senior center, because of the age of a lot of vulnerable people, should be sending emails to and informing the community of, what's going on for that segment of society, but also for the everyday Albany resident. Everybody's involved in society and doing their own thing, especially now after COVID. A lot of people are catching up and they forget. So both either internet messages and also, especially they're important, and a brief letter or a card would be very helpful for the outreach and communication.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'm just looking at these two things, trying to think how to combine them.
I was saying that outreach is the topic,
Right.
outreach is more overarching, and then maybe functional non-digital digital strategies, non-digital strategies.
So
And then bullets. I'm just saying bullets under these instead of all of these different topics.
got it. Okay, so
They're all outreach.
outreach at the top is what you're saying. I get it. Okay, so
Yeah,
outreach
yeah.
here.
Community outreach, or however you
Yeah,
want to say it.
okay, and then these are bullets.
Yeah,
Okay, community outreach.
these are the issues. Yeah, and then whatever the issues are.
Bullets.
And Jeremy, not to put you on the spot, but is this in line with like making it more concise, or what you mentioned at the top in terms of the where the format is going?
It's hard to say what the council is going to. If you look back at the last council meeting, they were looking at, I think it was the arts committee. I think it was arts committee, and they had some specific questions or recommendations that they wanted to address in terms of how functional it is for the next round of committee members to pick up where whatever the current advisory body is at, so that it's not just everybody starting from scratch, that there's either some history or some kind of continuity, but also that it is doable, right? Like so that people aren't getting lost in so many overarching larger projects that are just an unreasonable amount of tasks to get to, so that it actually can be a functional tool to keep everybody on track. I think that's and none of the, well, there's not really a template that gets to that. And I think that's what council would like to revise and then have the committees resubmit. So likely the committee will not necessarily take this to present to the council in June, because there's probably going to be some further instructions. So likely it would be July or September before the committee brings this back to present.
So Jeremy, if we like broke that paragraph up into determine functional communications for non-digital communication, increase accessibility to non-internet. I mean, if all those were more succinct bullets,
I think
like
that would
they
be
were action
fine.
points.
Yeah, I think that would be fine. If it needs to be constructed, you could always take bullet points and make those into sentences if council wants that. I'm not sure what the format will be, but I think getting to the clarity of the idea for the committee,
Yeah.
I think would be the best.
Okay.
One, as I listened to the committee talk through this, it seems to me that the survey, whatever survey type of process the city goes through, would determine whatever the outreach will be ultimately. So it seems to me that the surveying should likely be a priority prior to the outreach, so that we or maybe they live together. I see kind of what you're going through as you have this conversation.
Yeah.
I can move that up just for now and see what it looks like. So using Naomi's survey the community. Let's see. Oh wait, I could even take this up here.
I'm not sure work.
I was just trying to break it down into bullet.
Yeah, no, as you're breaking it down, I'm not sure work with AUSD Albany Village Senior Center businesses and local partners. I don't understand how that fits with survey the community.
Oh, I think it was in terms of distribute, it would be the distribution of the survey.
Oh, okay.
So
I
maybe,
think I would make that just clear then.
yeah,
But again, a survey is not just a single thing, and there is an awareness among those various groups of connectivity and accessibility already. So it's more establish through these various channels what sort of outreach the city could have, has, or could expect. And I would say, yeah, it'd be good to have, say, a survey in advance of various outreach things, but I'd see this as extremely iterative. If at the end of every year, the city says, here's how we've done in reaching people and people reaching us, that advises how next year they invest in reaching people through a variety of means. We need to bring in more groups that reach people in the streets, you know, in their homes, because we are not able to ensure that everyone is online.
right.
How do they know who they're reaching though?
Well, feedback through the various groups. I mean, I would absolutely say if they're not talking to groups about how people get their information that isn't on the internet, they're not doing a good enough job on that front.
Okay.
Trying to figure out where to put this.
And committee member Gray, I think that ladders nicely into what Jeremy's saying in terms of, as this committee evolves over time, having a measurable item to say like, how well did this group do in pushing this forward? I think that's very key. So I like that.
Right, I have to undo what I have no idea what I just cut. Oh, there, okay, so I have to find out what it is. Okay. Survey the community. This is gonna be rough, but I'm just gonna do this for now and then we can figure out how to structure it. Now it's worse, okay. Where is undo when you need it? I just can't find it on here. Okay. Edit.
And it's back, it's the back arrow. No.
Yeah, but there's nothing. Oh, this one. I just looked at the wrong one. Okay, sorry. I kept looking at the wrong one. I couldn't get it to do anything. Okay, survey the community to find out about how people get information about. Okay, I'll just do this. Or survey. You could survey or survey, just depending on your preference. Okay, and Ross, is that what you had in mind, using various city channels to find this information, including, is that, do you want to use a different word for that besides find? City related.
Yeah. Fine is a short, fine short word.
How people get information about city related events, show how they would like to receive that information. Where did that come from? I'll get it. I'm just gonna take that out for now because I don't know where it came from. Okay, survey the community to find out how people get information about city related event. Use various city channels to find this information, including. And then the report.
My one worry there is it's channels. I mean, the city is not the district and they each know it, even though the district is kind of under the charter. So I wouldn't say channels so much as, use city connections to other groups and bodies or something like that to find this information. They have connections with the district, whether or not they know how it hierarchically fits and all that.
Okay, let me fix this and then tell me that again. Okay, so not channels. What would you like to see in there?
Or
Connection?
maybe just say use various city collaborations.
Okay. There, how does that look?
Yeah, good.
It's kind of not, I mean, this colon and these bullet points don't match.
The first bullet point has two things in it. One, city-related events meeting survey must be, I don't understand what that first bullet is now. Yeah.
Yeah,
City
that's it.
related events,
Change it.
the survey must be accessible. Okay, well, maybe it should just say, here, oops. Jeremy's in my way. Jeremy, move out of my way. Okay, never mind. How about that? Survey the community find out information. Survey must be accessible. Survey must be, I was just trying to, because that's what it's about, right? To find out how to get about city related events and meetings. I can make that a bullet.
Yeah.
Survey must be accessible and multilingual, use various, yeah, that works, right? Sort of thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay. So we combined nothing. Did we combine anything? All right, this is all under survey the committee. All right, next. Well, that is pretty clear. The next one. Yes.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
The only, and this goes in the vein of, running the survey like annually or constantly so we understand where areas are improving. Jeremy, I know that with the emails that go out as well as KALB, and I was supposed to ask you this prior, but not to put you on the spot, but is there a way for us to measure the open rates, for instance, of emails as well as the viewership? That way, when we get the survey back, we understand how we should be communicating. We have that measure, and then we have a measure for how the reach, I guess, or the response rate is to the different channels once we determine what our outreach method is.
Yeah, for all of our city communications, I do have analytics and metrics for all of that we could coalesce and produce some sort of document or content viewing to share. The committee also, could request that be a regular part of committee meetings, to look at that on maybe that's a staff report type of presentation, in the same way that Transportation Commission receives information on traffic incidents on a monthly basis. Could look at those metrics.
Yeah, I move that we implement that because it will allow for us to see the progress that we're making, and if we're reaching enough of our residents.
Okay, so use city communication analytics and metrics. And there was a report. You said something about, and maybe, what did you say, Jeremy? And a report.
Yeah, that wouldn't be terribly difficult to put together, on my end. But perhaps it's something that the committee wants to look at on a regular basis, whether that's annually, monthly, quarterly. It just kind of depends. We can look at all of our social media accounts, our e-notifications through our website, e-news, which is through Constant Contact, trying to think the other places. Subscriber, follow information. We have all that pretty handy. I YouTube subscriptions, views, time viewed, those sort of things. We just for the committee's information, during Public Service Awareness Week, there's a council resolution where we provide that information kind of in a broader form to the city council for KALB. So this many users, this many subscribers, and it increases every year, but they're not receiving any more information than kind of the general, like, now we have this many subscribers and now we have this many followers on social media.
And the followers on social media, you can tell when they're actively doing something, or you just know how many followers you have?
Well, we can dive. It's a little bit more tricky across the variety of city pages and city accounts, but I can produce, I'll have to look back and see, but I can see post engagement. We can generally see likes or conversation around certain things. I don't know if you want to get that granular into post analytics, but it's all there for Facebook pages, for Twitter, for Instagram.
Okay. And Julian, does this, what I just typed in, cover what you were saying? Or is there more to add?
Reading it now. Let me just see. Yep, I think so. Do we need to say when we say regular, do we need to like put a cadence in there? I guess the other reports you were referencing, Jeremy, is there a certain cadence to those? I don't want to give anybody extra homework if it's not actionable.
Yeah, perhaps regular for now, and then that, as we look at that, maybe, since CMAC currently has quarterly meetings, maybe it's quarterly, but maybe that needs to change if meeting frequency changes.
Okay.
I'd leave it up to the committee to decide. Regular seems to be good for now.
I'm okay with that. It would be good to set a date for like the first one when we're putting this work plan in front of them, but I think regular works.
Yeah, tomorrow. Can we do it tomorrow? Okay. And then community outreach. And that, okay, so community outreach, there's this first one is the non-digital. And then, as Naomi was pointing out, there's the digital accessibility. So should we move that up so that it's just a bullet under community outreach? First one would be non-digital, and the second one would be digital.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree with that.
All right, so I'm going to do community outreach non-digital. And then I'll put digital here. So if we break this down into bullets, I could just make this, I'll start out just by making that, breaking it into bullets, and then we can get it better. Reach the most included. Okay, that's a start. So thoughts, word changes, rearranging?
Seems fine.
Yeah, looks good.
All right. Okay, and this one, let's see. So do you want, so we no longer have separate item numbers. Survey the, let me just get up
You
here.
won't need item numbers. You can consider the order would be the priority for this point for now.
Okay, I'm gonna take item 3 out then. And then, do you want me to try to bullet this? Jack and Naomi, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think every sentence is a bullet,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
See, it's a great community event, good for children. Creative outlet.
There needs to be a that after outlet.
Yep.
Creative outlet that promotes Albany.
Right.
There are a couple things that we'll need to kind of take into consideration for this particular item. One of which, these are statements about it, not necessarily to do actions, right? That's one thing. Also, one of the things, since CMAC isn't responsible for city events, perhaps this is the right time to look at how to make Film Fest not a city event. Maybe it's kind of looking at recommending the structure for either a Friends of Film Fest, a nonprofit, so that last item about the high level but less reliance on city staff report, that wouldn't necessarily be the CMAC's purview, as Film Fest exists as a city event right now. So we'd likely need to look at those different items in terms of working with committees towards the Arts Committee and Economic Development, but not necessarily making a recommendation on staffing levels. That would be outside of the purview of the committee.
Okay.
But
So,
it should be something about CMAC supporting Albany Film Fest, since it promotes many of the goals of CMAC about
Then you-
community involvement. and
Yeah,
that
then
kind
you
of
then
thing.
you might want to address that in the text for what CMAC will be doing to further this goal. Like, so it likely need to be, some sort of like, how is CMAC going to incorporate these? What are the goals within the context of the work plan?
Maybe it's more keep Albany Film Fest Albany centric or part of the community, or is that what you're getting at?
Not necessarily, but I think that's good too. I think what you'll want to address in the work plan is how is CMAC going to keep it sustainable? What does that mean? As opposed to the statements of what the benefits are. I think that's already kind of a given and doesn't need to be articulated, but what will CMAC do to further that? And then how does that relate in order of priorities for the total list?
Okay, how about something about Albany Film Fest CMAC partnership points? I mean, something like that. That means
Yeah.
they're two separate things.
Well, it runs into the issue of CMAC, an advisory body, and city events, right? Like that's the kind of, that's the friction point that we want to stay away from.
I know, yeah, I know what you're saying. I get it. But I feel like you're saying two different things, actually.
Probably, yeah.
Thank you, Jeremy.
okay. So what I've got, I left the beginning right now. We can take it out, but this is that, the description of Film Fest and why it's good.
Maybe it could be something like different ways that Film Fest can support arts and economic development, right? Like something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that way, one of the things that I think CMAC has been looking at is how to make these connections across advisory bodies. That's listed in another one of these items, and perhaps Film Fest becomes kind of a bridge between Arts Committee and Economic Development, because I think those are the strong points where CMAC can make recommendations. You know, what does it mean to the downtown business community? What
Right.
does it mean to put Albany on the map as a regional destination for an event? And how, you know, knowing the limitation of city staff resources, how do you grow that into a larger, maintain, so it's not just a 4th of July kind of event, but maybe does Film Fest need to be a larger scale? Does it need to stay community focused? Maybe you articulate those recommendations for CMAC around those priority items for economic development and arts in Albany.
Okay.
Yeah, because it actually, the Film Fest is not just the one-time event each year. It's also, as you know, Jeremy, it goes on throughout the year. So, you know, with our special showings.
Right.
So,
Well,
so we're not just talking about one event, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So probably a broader general
Yeah.
statement of what, and maybe, because we don't necessarily.
CMAC could be supporting the outreach efforts of the Albany Film Fest, or could be supporting its goals of trying to connect with more local residents. That's one of CMAC's goals, is to do outreach to the community, and it can be done through people participating in the Film Fest.
Okay,
so maybe it's Albany Film Fest, how Albany Film Fest can support city goals, and then call out CMAC and the business and arts communities.
so you want
And
that as the headline? I mean, as the title, Naomi?
Well, I'm just asking.
Yeah, so tell me, say it just so I can type it in, and then we can take it. How
Albany Film Fest supports city goals.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Jeremy?
But I think in terms of a work plan, it'll have to be rephrased.
Yeah, well, how would you rephrase it?
Well, we could just take
ensure that Albany Film Fest supports city goals, or is it a simple word change?
If we took all of this out.
Well, leave it in, because all we have to do is change wording.
Yeah.
It's gonna move it for a second. I'll put it back. It was just so you could see it without it.
Can see it.
I promise. I'll take it back. I promise.
I can see it, really.
No, but I can't. Okay.
Oh, well, okay.
I mean, I can see it, but I just want to say, if we say how Albany Film Fest supports city goals, and then this isn't here, which I promise I will put back.
Mm-hmm.
It says Albany Film Fest can promote arts and economic development. So CMAC will work in conjunction with Albany Arts Community to operate at the same high level with less resistance. And I mean, that's basically what you're saying, Jeremy, right?
Yeah, we can get around to the title as we work out am I muted? No, I'm not muted. As we work out the details, I think the one language change should be recommendations on ways that Film Fest can support arts and economic development. I think that's, instead of keep the Film Fest operating at the same high level, but with less, we could say something like identify recommendations or on ways that Film Fest can support the arts and economic development. Because that way it can be a broader discussion. But I think that you also might want to consider what are the other things that the city does in terms of city events or activities around the community. Are there other things that are similar to Film Fest that CMAC would support? So this is one of several different things that CMAC is looking at that is kind of on this scale of because what I think what Albany Film Fest is doing is for KALB, it is connecting, is kind of the public access component, getting the community involved in storytelling, you know, bringing the community together. Like these are all different things that are part of. It's not necessarily just the communications outreach, but there's kind of this community storytelling that's part of what KALB is, and I think that's what CMAC has supported. And I think that something like that should be articulated in support of Film Fest as opposed to CMAC managing or running the event.
Well, Film Fest was created to support CMAC storytelling.
Yeah, so maybe
You can just keep doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
Put that as a bullet. Yeah.
And under the, we had a section in the old work plan about media youth education, which I
Yeah.
don't think is in the new one. But I mean, we could say that CMAC supports the Film Fest efforts to provide media education for youth and for Albany citizens to better communicate among the community.
Say that, I'm sorry, say that again for me, please, Jack.
That CMAC would support Albany Film Fest's efforts to provide media education for local youth and for the community in general.
I took Latin in high school and not typing.
Yeah.
I just want you to know. My parents wouldn't let me take keyboarding, so I had to take Latin. So. My Latin isn't any better than my typing, however.
If only you could type in Latin.
Yeah, I know. Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah.
Cancel out all my problems. All right. So, so what Albany Film Fest can promote arts and economic development. How CMAC, so Jeremy, kind of what you're saying is how CMAC will use the Albany Film Fest to promote arts and economic development. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I think that gets to, you could think in terms of like the flow of what CMAC will do. CMAC will make some recommendations for council to approve, right? And so CMAC isn't necessarily doing it, but it will help council shape the policy for priorities. And I think there's a lot of kind of like spread the word of the understanding. Perhaps Arts Committee and Economic Development don't fully understand the potential, and CMAC can help articulate that. CMAC can make recommendations that the city council support Film Fest because of the media education components for youth, or work in conjunction with the school district. Like, so CMAC can make the recommendations for how the city supports Film Fest. CMAC also would be, since Film Fest came from CMAC, maybe CMAC can have that discussion of the different options for Film Fest's next iteration outside of the city, where the city can support Film Fest through funding and resources, but isn't necessarily the because, really there aren't any cities that are running film festivals. Those are typically nonprofits. And, we're in this gray area. Perhaps there's a good recommendation to make, Film Fest its own thing. And Film Fest has talked about that for years, how Film Fest could be a nonprofit. Maybe the city can, help facilitate that to some degree.
I had an idea that I didn't put in the work plan when I was looking at it. I thought about it later. We were talking about this new award we want to give out at the Albany Film Fest for films that show social justice themes. Is there a way we could work that in as part of the Film Fest goals, or not the CMAC goals for the Film Fest? Like CMAC supports Albany Film Fest efforts, Albany Film Fest effort to provide outreach and themes such as social justice and environmental awareness, that kind of thing? I mean,
You know,
that's-
probably not, because that becomes a programmatic issue for Film Fest. However, I remember at some early discussions with this iteration of CMAC earlier on that didn't get into the work plans. I remember the committee discussing aspects of land acknowledgements and other social justice issues as part of adding that to the work plan as opposed for the council to consider. So perhaps that becomes a component of that, right? As CMAC is looking towards helping the city determine its general communication, maybe that type of content that's not specific to Film Fest, there could still be, Film Fest can come up as an item when the committee discusses issues like that.
So can I put this here? Bullet it. Like something like that?
I think so.
I don't know.
So it could be through all other means, not just Albany Film Fest.
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, social justice, there's CMAC addressing, I'll put CMAC addressing social justice issues, and gosh, it's deteriorating. Okay.
I would probably put this, kind of in the context of what it means for community communications, news, pulse of the public, those sort of things, because if it falls in line with the communications or media outreach, I think that would be within the committee's purview, right? So how do you get to that in terms of either the public meetings, the live stream, the print media, the messaging, the branding, all of those kind of things? Maybe that is where the committee kind of weighs in on these things.
Okay, so should we have that incorporated or have that pulled out as a separate item like it is now? Because what you're saying is what we've got up here is about social justice, right? Surveying, doing the outreach, all of that. Is that what you're saying, Jeremy?
I think so. Kind of looking, it really is going to be up to the committee to determine that. But I think that from listening to the conversations, that's something that has come up around this accessibility, inclusion, those that is perhaps something that the city needs some assistance or some guidance, so it's really concrete, so nobody's being skipped over because nobody thought about that already.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
I mean, we have this sentence in here.
Yeah, that's good.
Maybe that needs to be a bullet point somewhere, so it becomes, as opposed to just a statement, it becomes a concrete part of the work plan.
Yeah, so where should we put that?
Well, it says it's implicit in all initiatives, so it can't say that anymore.
How about if I just make it bold and like that?
Maybe, because it just depends on what the format is, whether or not there's a paragraph that precedes bullet, I'm not sure what that's going to look like. But perhaps that's a good enough statement for now.
And I'll
Could
put-
I add just one more thing to what the Film Fest does for this various city groups, to add sustainability also, because we do have a big sustainability eco component. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, I have two titles here. Should I take away keeping Albany Film Fest?
Yeah.
accessible? Okay,
Yeah,
Maybe support city of Albany goals with Albany Film Fest or something like that.
Just sports.
Because this is still
Yeah.
the title is still, I think it needs to be more of an action as
Yeah.
opposed to a statement about what it does.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll put support City of Albany sustainability ability goals.
Yeah.
Actually, I could just leave it like that, right?
Fine.
But to put through Albany Film Fest, but because we're talking about the Albany Film Fest.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, so that would work. Because now our title is this. There. Okay. So should I take out this addressing social justice issues since we have that sentence up above that's in bold? Yes.
Yeah, I guess so. The title of this one is kind of strange. How?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so what would you like? Let me take this out. Okay. Just how about Albany Film Support?
I was gonna say something like CMAC supports city's efforts in Albany Film Fest, or I don't know if that's the right phrase, but
Maybe something like use Albany Film Fest to something, or utilize Albany Film Fest to
to
support city
achieve
goals.
city goals, yeah,
Yeah.
or
Okay. How's that? Yes? No?
this the last bullet point about sustainability goals, is that we're talking about environmental sustainability?
What were you talking about?
Well, I just want to know if that's what
Yeah, I think that's
Ability is
what
referring to.
Naomi was mentioning.
Naomi, okay.
Perhaps
Yeah.
maybe since you're doing sustainability, maybe also add another bullet point that's around the social justice.
right.
aspect.
That's what I was going to say. If we're
Yeah.
talking about environmental sustainability, we should do social justice too.
Yeah, that's it. Also a committee, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Support City of Albany social justice goals.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Okay.
You might want to change that language if you do sustainability. If you want to tie it in with the advisory body, that would be Climate Action Committee.
Okay, support City of Albany Climate Action Committee's goals.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a real committee, right?
Yeah, it's a real
Yes.
committee, and
Mm.
and the social justice goals would be social
Oh, SEJC goals.
SEJC. Yeah, you can
Okay.
do CAC or SEJC. I think that would be fine. Well, actually, if we'll write the whole thing out: social and economic justice, because I think that's also in line with what CMAC was charged to do, is kind of get the word out for what's happening in other committees, and that's a list down below. So there's
Mhm.
some tie-in, and perhaps CMAC can facilitate those connections when Film Fest comes around, for example.
Yeah, I think, and I know that came up in SEJC, that they were like having the exact same conversation that we were having about reaching out to the community members and getting information out. It was like, it was amazing.
And when Film Fest is in person, it's the only time where you can sit down for a half an hour and watch a slideshow about information. So, between the films, perhaps that's the communication. Big screen.
All right. Next one, the health.
First, before we go on that, is everything cleaned up on the top? That, do you want to do it as like a sentence of description and then bullet points, or just do only bullet points for your formatting?
I just want to get this, there it is. Just want to get that out of
So
there.
maybe I suggest that go through and do all of this rough work, then open it up for public comment, and then come back and finalize something like that.
Sure.
Yeah,
I mean, how do other people feel? That's okay with me.
that sounds good.
Worked for me.
Okay, so health show fair. Wait, so who brought this? Somebody must have brought this up. I know it showed up, but I couldn't remember where.
Yeah, it was in the list, so I added it. It looks like the item would probably need a little bit of, maybe it's for. Yeah, I'm not quite sure, so I just go ahead and put it in. So it's up to the committee to decide how to kind of work with that.
Yeah, so any thoughts from the committee on that one? It seems like somebody somebody felt pretty strongly about it because I remember it was all caps in the rough draft from somebody.
It seems a little bit more towards an event that CMAC could support if, I don't know if it was about a city creating a health show, but I do like the idea of building awareness around community health issues. I think that is, certainly, with COVID and communications, I could see that there could be something around that. I don't know how evergreen that content, is, or how relevant that is over the course of, the kind of a general understanding of what CMAC should do.
Yeah, it
Didn't
seems,
Charles bring this up? I thought Charles brought it up.
was this yours, Charles? You're muted.
For the last 8 or 9 years, I have been with San Francisco State University, which I'm still there. We have had several health fairs, and they're very successful. People get excited, and we get the right synergy, and it does two great things. And it engages the community, and there's an outreach. So what I'm thinking take a while, but I can do the business plan. But Whole Foods, Sprouts, Baron, which is alternative medicine, CVC, maybe Walgreens, Decathlon, and some anchor, I'm going to use words, anchor tenants that will participate. And then local business, acupuncture, et cetera, physical therapy. So my thoughts are the high school would be the ideal place. And maybe I'm thinking about 20, at least tents, or if not larger than that. I'm sure we can get the right, it's going to take a while, but I think we might be able to successfully do one by the end of the year. But it'll create income for even for the city of Albany, because we can charge, if that is permissible, for the different guests are going to be there. But most important, it'll do two things: engagement and outreach, and new knowledge will be disseminated. There's a lot of people that have never had, and it works great. There's a lot of people that have never had alternative medicine, et cetera. And there's a lot of synergy. So those are my thoughts, and I think there's a need for that. When we get together, I can do a more elaborate outline.
I thank you for explaining that. I appreciate that. It sounds great. I look forward to the day when it's not called alternative. So this is like a one-time event, Jeremy. Is that something we can put in here?
No, not it sounds like a great event, but committees don't do events. This likely, if there were to be an event in the city like this, CMAC could support the promotion of it, but it would have to come from some other agency. The city could create an event, but that would likely have to be an internal, and the city is not doing events like this really. I'm trying to think of maybe the library or the school district, but it certainly wouldn't be an event that would originate from CMAC, right? So if the event were to happen and another either city department were to create the event and do the event, or another agency or organization, or if the event were to happen in Albany, then perhaps KALB would cover it, or perhaps CMAC would want to support events like this in terms of maybe a policy around outreach for community events that are happening in Albany. Maybe it's something along those lines. So were there to be a health show fair, maybe there's a policy that city council says that, you know, if this affects people in this manner, and you can extend it to, so that there's some equity here, right? Like, so, you know, anybody can say that they have a valid event that's happening in Albany, but how do we as a city say that these are the metrics to determine this is the event that the city is going to get behind? Maybe CMAC can help articulate where the city will promote outside agency events.
Jeremy, thank you so much for bringing that up. It doesn't matter where we get the support for this, but I think especially right now, after the COVID virus crisis, there's a great need for this now.
You know, what I might suggest, you know, just kind of as a reference, maybe this is something to take to Albany Cares, which is we're doing this type of work, and Charles, I could pass you on that information, and perhaps that organization would be able to create some type of health fair around these ideas, and then that might be the more appropriate venue.
That's fine. You know, that's great. My plans are ideally with the support of CARES or whoever it is to do it at least once a year or maybe twice. Okay, because when you see the synergy of what's happened in San Francisco State, and we also with University of California in San Francisco, we invited Dr. Jane Goodall and all the wildlife refuge, but that's too big for Albany. I won't go there. But the health fair there's a need, and I'm pretty sure that we will be able to get the right sponsors. So CARES would be a great place. So you guide us and whatever, but I'll be there to make it happen.
A question, since Jeremy, you would probably know, we're about 3.5 months out from September. What are the city's plans for the Solano Stroll this year?
The city doesn't run the Stroll.
Sure.
Yeah, so I believe that it is not happening in person, but I'm not certain about that. I have a feeling that I believe I heard something, but don't quote me. I'm not certain what their plans are. It may be on their website that it's not happening. I can check it right now.
So while you're checking out, so one thought I had is, what if we combine support and promote community events related to community health and equity under communication between city advisory bodies, and it wasn't just city advisory bodies, it would be, and other, you know, something larger than that. So it would include whoever ends up doing like the event. Does that make sense?
One thing that I could oftentimes, I'm sorry, looking at events, we get approached, especially in our communications, e-news, for example, you know, there's a resident or there is a community group that has some type of event that is happening, and will you please let everybody know about this? You know, and some are great, some may or may not be great, some it would be appropriate for the city to promote, some not. So maybe there's some clear guidelines that CMAC can provide to council about, you know, what is, you know, for example, different people have mentioned the farmers market at the Gill track, you know, and the city has kind of worked out a space to feature things that are happening around town, or for the Albany Library, or even now kind of adding AUSD, you know. So what are the other organizations? Maybe there's some sort of, you know, I need to have some sort of rules for us to follow, you know, so that we can share the information because we have kind of the widest reach probably in Albany with our Nextdoor and with our Facebook. Maybe there are certain ways that CMAC can help the city determine how to share what's relevant and interesting to the Albany community. And by the way, I did, Solano Stroll is not in 2021, according to the Solano Avenue Association website.
Yeah, it sounds like they're gonna have a sort of not stroll event in October that doesn't involve closing down the street, et cetera. So, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it looks like there's a walkabout on the 12th.
Okay.
So, okay, so for this, is there a way that we could combine what you just talked about into with the communications between city advisory bodies, or is it so important that we have city advisory bodies separate that we shouldn't water it down by adding anything else?
I think helping advisory bodies spread the word about what's happening at their meetings and what will be talked about, I think is important enough to be addressed on its own. But
Yeah.
it's up to the committee.
Yeah, okay, but I think that too. Okay. So anybody else thoughts on that?
So where's the health aspect coming in, or is that still in it, or are we taking that out?
The health, support and promote community events.
Yeah, is that a separate item that we're putting in, or?
I was trying to figure out a way of combining that with something else so that it could be like have more.
I think the providing guidelines for centralized location disseminating, it would be perfectly combined with community events related to the community health and equity. So somehow kind of putting those together, so how the city can share that information with the public. For example, a health fair that comes up that's provided by, in the community, that's not specifically a city event.
Right, okay.
Excuse me, I have to leave, so I'll say goodbye to all of you. Take care. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, Charles.
Afternoon.
Thank you.
Nice to see you all.
Yeah, that's a centralized location for disseminating relevant and appropriate. So I could have, this is an example. I don't know. That's just.
I don't think it should be, for example, I think it could be provide guidelines for the city of centralized disseminating relevant and appropriate information related to bullet points,
Okay.
community health and equity, and a list of other things.
Okay.
Community health, equity, social justice,
Climate change.
climate change.
Yeah.
Okay. Community health and equity. So should I take out the next one?
That could be part of the statement above. The top one, communications between advisory bodies, provide recommendations. Perhaps this. So I would say provide guidelines and recommendations for the city of Albany. And maybe the communications between city advisory is provide guidelines and recommendations too. So there's these two things that CMAC is specifically going to assist with.
Okay, so have that. Do you want, should I leave that with the bold title?
Yeah, and then maybe the next one is communications from outside organizations or something general like that.
Okay. Yes.
When I was in a meeting with Peggy's other advisory body appointees, every time we have that meeting, pretty much we end up talking about how nice it would be if the advisory committees could somehow not be so siloed, because a lot of them have sort of cross pollination that could happen. So I don't know if that's a thing that can fit in here somehow.
I think that CMAC could research that, get that information, and make a recommendation for how that could happen.
Yeah, that's keeps coming up. So,
Okay, so I'm going to change this to among. Communications among city advisory bodies and, this is including both. It's both communication among the city advisory bodies, but also out to the broader Albany community.
Yes.
yeah,
So communication among, from, and I'm gonna do this.
I think you should make those separate. I think those are two separate things. I think you're going to want to help advisory bodies disseminate their information to the public to get more people attending meetings.
Mhm.
And so everybody knows what's happening, right? And then I think you're also going to look at a way for there to be this kind of cross communication, how, keeping in mind the limitations of the Brown Act, but how do you create a forum with all of the chairs to be able to talk about maybe I'm just, coming up with some ideas, but like maybe there's a community listening webinar with all the chairs of the advisory bodies, and the public gets to come and address them and talk about the things that are important and have a discussion or a panel discussion around those things. There's
Yeah.
certain things where it doesn't have to be just another meeting or a subcommittee, but maybe there's a way to get the public involved, in an appropriate way that meets all the requirements of the Brown Act.
I like that.
Okay, so
So CMAC would be sort of making a recommendation on how to improve
Facilitate.
communications between advisory bodies, right?
Yeah,
And the public.
and the public.
And the
so
public.
what I was thinking is if we just called this city advisory bodies and then had two bullets, one would be how the city can get advice from advisory bodies to the public, and the other one
Mhm.
would be advisory bodies among themselves.
Right.
Do it that
Right.
way?
Yeah.
Is that,
Is-
instead of having it be two, let me just see what it looks like. So this would be provide guidelines.
How about, isn't it the headline supposed to be an action point? Jeremy?
Yeah,
Like,
I think that would be,
Improve communication between city and advisory bodies and with the public.
Or improve city advisory body communications. How about that? Would that work? And then bullet one would be provide guidelines how the to the broader community. And then two would be provide guidelines,
Among the among the advisory committees.
right, and recommendations for how city or city
I like that.
bodies can recommend how city advisory bodies can better communicate among themselves. I'll put that, and then anybody welcome to change it, make it better. Communicate among themselves, just so it's
Communicate and share information.
okay.
Mhm,
Communicate and share information among themselves. That's nice, right? Improve city
Yes.
advisory body communications. That's kind of hard hitting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get it together, we're saying.
yeah, and it may share information among themselves. There may, that may need to be workshopped a little bit for Brown Act considerations. I'm not sure.
How about work synergistically? Can better communicate and work synergistically?
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound cool?
That sounds so not Brown Act breaking.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to get away from.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
but
if we're making recommendations, we'll have to take into consideration the Brown
Right.
Act implications.
Right.
It's more just not being siloed. It's more,
right.
Yeah.
you know,
I can
that's all.
put in,
sure, there's a way.
I can put in taking into account, Brown Act, but let's just assume that we know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to articulate that, but I'm thinking eventually whenever this gets presented, and then eventually whatever those guidelines and recommendations are, that will have to be addressed at that point.
Okay. Can we put in our guidelines that the city council can't limit us to just 2 items? Recommend that city council do not limit CMAC to 2 items on their work plan. All right. Okay, so that looks good. So, and then this one, provide guidelines for the city of related to community. Oh, then, okay, so Jack, you had said something else that was about the
I
climate.
said if we're talking about other important issues in the community, so climate change or sustainability could be some of the ones that we would want to see
Okay,
go through the city to help get information out about.
okay. Sustainability. Okay, anything else?
You know, the way that I see this, you know, in terms of actual practice is helping the city understand how it can either access additional information, like, you know, what's the city's policy on sending out news reports, you know, to the community, that's or especially outside organizations, you know, who want to promote something in Albany. Say there's an outside organization who wants to do an event, is doing an event in Memorial Park, and it's so important that they want the city to promote it. You know, where does, you know, how does the city make that determination? Right now, since there's no policy, the city just says no, you know, because we don't have a way of, you know, saying yes or no.
Okay, so should we try to put that in here? Guidelines, community.
I would say that it'd be somewhere in the title for outside organizations. Yeah.
Right, in this title right here, provide guidelines.
Yeah.
Okay, semi appropriate related, okay. For disseminating relevant and appropriate information.
From outside organizations or outside agencies, you know, is trying to, you know, say St. Albans Church wants to promote a thing. How does, you know, and it's obvious to all of the city of Albany residents that's important, but there's, you know, how does the city share that information? And then say no to some other organization that's in Albany that's like St. Albans Church, for example.
Non-city bodies. Or I mean, I can put outside organization. I'm just not sure what an outside organization, outside of what.
Outside the city.
Yeah.
I think it's
You know,
clear.
you know, because we have ongoing relationships with Albany Library, Albany Unified School District, AC Transit, you know, the county, right? Like, you know, governmental organizations, you know, we will share information. We have some, but we don't have anything for private organizations. You know, what are the determining factors for the city to be able to say yes, you know, if it's something of importance?
Do you want to call it private organizations,
Could
Chairman?
be.
Is that what you're talking about? I mean, would that be more
You know,
They're not all
maybe,
private.
specific?
yeah, maybe it's, you know,
Outside
think-
/ private?
yeah,
Yeah,
outside, private, yeah.
They could be nonprofits. Which
Nonprofit, right? You know, maybe there's a list of different types of organizations.
Yeah.
So then in that case, then we should probably have more headings here. I mean, more topics besides climate change, sustainability, health and equity. Because I was thinking like even economic, I don't know what you'd call it, you know, working with organizations that they want to talk about homelessness, for example. So that would be.
You say homelessness?
I could say homelessness, or I could say, what's it called? There's a term for that, but yeah, I'll put homelessness and then I'll remember.
Or housing? I mean, you just say
Yeah, housing.
housing issues?
Yeah.
You know, I should also mention we're about 15 minutes away from the end time for tonight's meeting. So if you don't think that the committee will be able to wrap up the discussion and kind of prioritization, you might want to keep in mind making a motion to extend the meeting at some point.
Socioeconomic status, that's the word I want to think of. Housing. Okay, so yes, so somebody want to make a motion that we extend the meeting?
Well, I've got to be on a
We can
plane
finish.
very early tomorrow morning, so I wouldn't be able to stay long.
Like 15 minutes more, like 7:15, could you do?
Yeah.
Let's
So
just
want to make a motion that
keep
we,
going.
what?
Yeah. I'll move that we extend it to 7:15.
Okay, second.
I second that.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded.
Okay, so let me do a quick roll call. Member DeMatthew is not here. Member Newton, Member Lewis,
Aye.
Member Kenny,
Hi.
Member Siegel,
Aye.
Member Stapleton Gray,
Aye.
Chair Winkelstein.
Aye. There are a lot of us. Okay.
Exciting.
It is. Okay, so I put S socioeconomic status, and that's what I had in mind. Like, that's something I think that needs to get talked about. Okay. So it's probably going to get shot back to us anyway, right? So if there's other things we want to, they're probably going to send it back to us with questions. You were saying, Jeremy?
I was just going to say that second bullet point probably can be removed because that's covered in the first bullet point.
Okay. Good point. Okay. Any more discussion about that one? Okay, liaison with Albany schools.
I think that's pretty clear.
I do
I'd like to see something in there about promoting partnership efforts between the school district and the city, like Jeremy's done before with his internships and, trying to use the content that we might be able to get from, say, the high school for KALB or for the city website.
Okay, how's that? Does that cover it?
Well, I be a little more specific, I guess.
Do you want me to say what? For
Well,
example?
just the, I don't know, but I don't know if it has to be, for
Including
example.
internships or,
Yeah, including,
So these are city internships, right?
yeah.
Okay,
Jeremy, you still have that program going, don't you?
Well, yeah, it was happening prior to COVID, so I don't see why that wouldn't continue, with the exception that I think there's going to be less city events likely, in the future compared to the way the city events have been done in the past. But I think that's still what I would say is including city internships and special programs, something like that.
yeah.
So do we want to say in support of the KALB operation?
In special program in support of, yeah, I think so. In support of KALB operations, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, that could be a training program to run cameras for
Right.
programs and.
Yeah.
sounds great.
My only question is, as we kind of learn other areas in which we need to communicate, could our efforts and internships kind of expand beyond KALB to help
Yeah.
support those?
I think, for
yeah.
example, like, perhaps human resources needs an intern to help with social media, for example,
Mhm.
maybe that is a part of KALB's kind of fingers in all the communications, but, maybe it ties into the public information officer, and that's not specifically a KALB position.
So Julian, would other city functions cover that for you?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay. All right. Other thoughts on that one? We're doing great, right? Okay. So does this person already, somebody said that they thought that this person already existed, but
Not as a full-time job,
so it's a
Yeah.
part-time.
right? It's a part-time job.
Yeah, the good thing is that the city asks, or the CMAC asks, and now the CMAC received. So this is actually in the works for the next budget year to add an official public information officer, though I believe it is part-time and shared amongst other department activities. So, but what's good is what's being proposed is working in conjunction with KALB. So there will be some focus kind of like on the overarchingness of communications, but is not a full-time position only dedicated to that.
So a full-time person would still be reasonable to propose.
Correct. Yeah.
Just to propose it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can I put that in the title?
Yeah. I mean, other cities have them.
Yep.
It's
Mhm.
typical, right?
Yep.
It's just a typical position.
Yeah, it is a typical position. It depends, like I don't know how many small cities have full-time. Usually it'll be a shared, like the city clerk is also the PIO, right? Or something like
Mhm.
that. So and perhaps CMAC can do that investigation and say out of all the California cities, this many cities have full-time, and here's some parity with other, here's the justification for a full-time position for a city of Albany size.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other comments about this one?
Looks good.
Clearly denies.
Ordains.
So what is that word?
Define.
Oh, defines. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think,
What a team.
the city doesn't necessarily have has an internal communications plan, but not necessarily external, right? How some sort of written definition about everything that you're talking about here and how it should be happening.
Yeah.
Some sort of policy for the city to follow.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, hand that to the communications officer.
Mhm.
Yeah. Welcome, full-time public information officer. Here's your
Well, actually, if various people are part-timing that job, and I don't know how many people that is, something like a guide like that would be very handy for them so that everything flowed out in the same way.
Yeah. Okay. So now we just
Okay, we done?
Almost, yeah. I think you might want to open it up for some public comment if we have any. It looks like we have one attendee.
I just wonder who that attendee is. Sure. I'll open up to public comment. Is there a member of the public who would like to speak on the work plan for CMAC?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. All right. So I just, this is just, I'm just stemming this again, track to it. All right, okay, so we basically got the rough thing. So Jeremy, what you'll do next is you'll put this together and then send it to us. Is that correct?
Yes. So if this is final, I can. So here's the question. As you look through this, as you go through each one of these items, is this the order of priority?
Good point. Okay.
We can do an informal poll. You can. Let's see. I'm trying to think about how some of the other committees that I was watching did this. Basically, how many items do we have? So a couple different things. You can just go say if it's, unanimous, let's move this above this, and then come to that conclusion for the order. Maybe different committee members have different priorities. Maybe if there's 7 items everybody ranks it 1 through 7, your favorite order, and then we'll come to some sort of consensus like that.
It looks like there are 9 items.
So if there's 9 items, I mean, everybody can just individually rank them, and then you can read them out in your order, and then we can kind of see if there's some sort of conclusion there, or you just go one by one. This goes up, this goes down.
Yeah.
Right now? Are you
Yeah,
talking
right
about
now. That'll
Do that. Let's do that.
Which one?
Because I can't see the whole thing. I mean, I'm not where I can only see what's on my screen right now, so.
Right.
Okay, so survey the committee. The community is number 1 right now. Let's just go look at, so it's survey the community. This is all under survey using all so film survey, film fest, or maybe there aren't 9.
You want me to number those real quick just so that you can see?
Yeah, let's do that. Because
Okay.
I think one of them looks like it's a bunch, but it's actually just one. We're gonna get you out of here, Ross, really close to time. You're gonna just do great.
Julie, is the item on community outreach, is that including all of the survey and the digital, non-digital stuff?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I thought it was a bunch of
Okay.
items, but I think it's all the same thing. Wait, where is it? I have to find it. There it is, community outreach. So that's actually number 1, Jeremy.
Community outreach is number 1.
Yeah,
So okay, survey the community, right? Oh,
outreach, non-digital, determine functional communication strategies, digital. So this is all about, yeah, reaching out to the community. So that's actually number 1. And then
okay. I'm sorry. What is survey the community?
it's number
1.
survey the community. I don't know. Wait,
It's number
I
1.
think that one's
Number
number one. Yeah.
oh, it is number 1.
Yeah.
Where is it?
And then community outreach is number 2.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I missed it.
No.
Okay, so that's number 1. That's 2. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then non-digital, digital goes all under community outreach.
Got it.
Hmm.
Oh yeah. 3. Okay.
Mm.
Oops. Formatting. 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Yeah, so it looks like that look closer.
Yeah,
Yeah, so there's 8. Okay. So we could just have everybody put them in the order they want and then we could vote, or do you want to just go through them? Like, how many people think number 1, we could do it that way?
Well,
What do you
I'm
want?
wondering if anyone thinks that any particular item really needs to move up or down. From my perspective, I think they're okay.
Yeah, I agree with that.
City, go.
I'm in agreement, except that I think that the last one, number 8, a communications plan, should probably move up near the top.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, it should at least go near the,
Because the
Okay.
ones we're talking about,
Yeah.
outreach and the survey, are all
Yeah.
part of that, so they kind of fit together.
Would you see it going as 3 or 1?
So
I guess I
after-
would put it as 3.
Yeah, I was just gonna
Sure.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see that.
Okay with
Jeremy,
that.
You want to do that?
Do you want me to pop that in there and move that?
Yeah, could you do that? Yeah.
Yeah, that looks good. I'm good with that.
Wow,
Yeah.
me too. That was
Wow,
too easy.
was.
I think we did a good job. All right.
That's 2 minutes over the time.
Wow.
No, look at that, Ross.
Well, we moved for 7:15, so we should probably stay, right?
Yeah, no.
That's what I was gonna say. Well, Ross has to stay anyway. Like everybody else can go home. He has to stay for 13 minutes.
So Jeremy, you're gonna make this like neater and then send it to us for,
Yeah, so likely that there's this would be the final document as it is right now. So I mean, I could probably do some, if there's some punctuation issues or something like that, or just some general cleanup. I don't know how much of the relation to the city council strategic plan will be necessary at this point. I don't know what they're going to require. I would imagine that after the council meeting in the future where they talk about this, there will be some, I don't know if it will need to come back to the committee or if staff will be allowed to just kind of modify the content to fit a new format. I don't know if they're going to ask for more information or not. That'll be determined by the council. So there may be need for a special meeting in June to look at this if they want CMAC to present in July. But as it stands now, the chair won't need to present this in June. We know that. We know that for sure.
Okay, great. So when you
Do we
send
need
it
to
out
vote on anything?
No, there's nothing that needs a vote. You did, this is a discussion item and you worked through and kind of did the work.
Okay.
You may want to consider in the future how these items relate to subcommittees for whatever the work is going to be done once the committee starts working through this. Let me pull up the agenda here too. Let's see. Yeah, you did all the work you were supposed to do.
So when you send it out to us, if we find typos or something, we would just send it back to you. We would make the corrections. Or are you assuming?
Yeah. I'll have to check with Ann and see what my understanding is. This is finishing the work plan. I can go through a review. I think maybe I'll communicate with the chair directly to finalize that information.
Okay, that sounds good. Right, and I just realized that in the last two meetings, committee member or co-chair, no, whatever it is,
Vice chair.
Matthew was taking notes.
Yeah, so somebody will. I think usually at the approval of the minutes there, that's when somebody is selected to volunteer to do the minutes for the next meeting. You might want to.
So we didn't do that this time. I'm just pointing out that no one was taking minutes, as far as I know.
Well, it's all part of the video and the transcript too. So if anybody needs
all right,
that.
good. Okay, and it was pretty straightforward. We discussed the work plan. I know. I just realized that we probably need to think about that in the future.
Yeah, the minutes are for committees. Action minutes is required. So the committee discussed and finalized the work plan with the following bullet points. Is sufficient.
Okay, good. All right. So and do we need to look at future agenda items? Did anybody have anything for a future agenda item?
I think it's just finishing up the work plan if we need to, and starting to implement it if it's finished.
Okay, and deciding on subcommittees.
Yeah,
If-
right.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. Okay, so is that it? Next regular meeting is July 26th, 2020 at 6 p.m.
Yeah, well, I'll communicate with the chair directly to see if we need to bring this back to the committee, if there is additional information the council requests, or whatever needs to happen with the work plan once they come up with the new format, which should happen, we anticipate in June.
Okay. All right, sounds good. All right, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you for your.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right.
You got a
Have a
lot
good night.
done. All right, bye.
Bye.